Hi everyone. Um, Today I want to talk about my experience with um, anxiety disorder. I'm gonna end up getting into like panic attacks and talking about that sort of stuff. So just letting you know. Um, I think this also might take like two videos to cover. Um, so my first actual I guess experience with it was in middle school. Um, I was getting bullied pretty much daily by that point, uh, and I didn't really have friends around, like in my day to day at my school. Uh, it was nothing physical. There was really no physical bullying. It was just constant verbal, um, at like every opportunity. Uh, so this was in seventh grade. Uh, I'm not sure exactly what happened or like why it happened, I guess. I ended up having to go to the nurse, but um I just we were in class and nothing was really going on. We were just in class, having a lesson, whatever. And I just started feeling this like tightness in my chest and I was like struggling to breathe properly. Um and like at first I thought it would pass if I let it go for like a minute, but it was actually starting to get worse. Like I couldn't breathe right, and I was feeling like you know this like pit in my stomach. Like I was really nervous, and so I went to the nurse, and eventually it went away. Uh, and then the next day, I think, um, or sometime that week, someone talk to me. I don't know if they were a counselor or just another teacher or like I don't know exactly. Probably because I just don't remember. I'm sure at the time it was explained, but I don't remember. I guess maybe the nurse had like said something because through the course of figuring out what was happening to me, I had to answer some questions and ended up just I probably just ended up like talking about like what was happening with me at school and with my peers. So I guess she probably said something to someone. Um, but so I talked to someone who just like asked me a bunch of questions, more about how I was doing at school and kind of how my relationship was with my classmates and whatever. And ultimately, nothing ever really came of it. Nothing really changed. So I'm not really certain what the point of any of that was, other than probably people trying to uh, cover themselves more than anything else. So yeah, nothing ever really changed until I graduated and went into high school. Um, but there I just tended to avoid like situations that were socially precarious. Um, so I didn't do any social gatherings with like people I didn't know. Um, I didn't go to prom. Not that I regret that really. I would have hated being there. Regardless of other things I was going through at the time. But yeah, that was like my first, I guess, experience with some anxiety related symptoms or something. Um, and I ended up, like, throughout high school just kind of mm, burying myself with, like, humor and kind of surface level interaction. Um, no one really knew me, so to speak. Um, I didn't allow for that because I had learned that that was I had learned that that sort of stuff would be used against me. It made high school easier. It was also easier in general because I was a lot closer to friends there. Um, but definitely I think my earlier years had set a baseline of sorts. I spent a lot of my time in, like, escapist kind of hobbies, so I watched a lot of TV shows, I played a lot of video games, and towards towards the end of high school, I actually started, I became interested in doing gameplay videos, and I did that for a while on a channel I don't use anymore. Haven't used it in a long time, actually. Uh, but I think overall, because of how I approached interacting, or my at least my philosophy behind it, and what I was doing, you know, not really being very open and just trying to be, like, comedic all the time, and it's sort of by not being, like, real at all, I think it kind of ended up desocializing me from just the constant masking, and that kind of followed me into, like, my first 2 years in college. That went okay. It kind of felt like a continuation of high school of sorts, because some of my friends were with me there too. Um, so it went all right. I did what I needed to do for the most part to you know, get enough credits to, like, transfer campuses when I needed to, and so that was all fine. I did change majors a lot, but it ultimately didn't really affect, like, at least the number of credits I ended up getting. By the time I was living on campus, where I was supposed to finish my degree, I had one friend there as my roommate for one semester, and everything that wasn't my room was socially precarious. So I barely ever went to my classes. I almost never ate at the actual, like, dining places on campus. I would just get, like, a takeout box and go back to my room and eat. I just stayed in my room as much as possible. And then after that first semester, I was just on my own entirely. My friend had moved out. It kind of made it even worse being on my own, like that, with no one else to distract me, just constantly with my own thoughts. So things got worse mentally for me. I left my room even less. I would just leave once a day at, like, the end of the day to get, like, one huge, like, takeout meal. I didn't make any new friends. I didn't do well in my classes, except probably a critical reading course that I really liked. I actually mentioned that in, I think, a previous video, but I think I cut that out. And a few months into that semester, second semester, I just dropped out. I've talked about it before. There were some other things too. I just generally wasn't interested in most of what I was being told I had to learn to complete my degree, and so there was that too. but I might have been able to get past that had I been had I been able to stomach being around, other people, strangers, um, for so much of my time there. And I couldn't. And the second college I went to later in that year was even worse. Um, this, I think, is a little over 10 years ago at this point. Isolating the way that I had been doing it had made the anxiety just stronger and more potent and more likely to trigger, I guess. With less triggers required. So at that time, the school year had barely started before I was again too anxious to leave, except to get food like once or twice a day. I constantly felt nervous in public, so I did what I could to try to help simmer it down. So I just listened to music constantly, walking around. My hood was up all the time, hands in pockets. The everyone's seen this like archetype of person. That was basically me. Just everything I could visibly to discourage human interaction as much as possible. I did it. But of course, sometimes that doesn't matter to people, especially if those people happen to be drunk. They don't care about the hood. They don't care about the music. They don't care about the overall demeanor. They just see another human and are compelled to socialize with them. So, one night I went out for food, like usual, and there were the pavement I had to walk down was like kind of long to get to a set of steps I had to take downwards to get to where I needed to go. So I was walking down this pavement, and there were two drunk girls walking like in my direction, like the opposite way, towards me. And as we passed, they noticed me or whatever, and they started trying to talk to me. I don't remember like what was said really at all, but I did my best to like respond, and for some reason or another, alcohol, I don't know, they wanted to try to guess where I was from. Overall, this interaction was extremely short, despite it at the time feeling incredibly long, way longer. And it would have been fine, unpleasant as it was for me at the time. It still would have been just fine. The problem was that the interaction ended with both of them hugging me. At the same time, um, after they let go, we walked away from each other. I walked to the end of the pavement where I'd been going, um, and proceeded to stop and just have a panic attack. I just sat down on the ground, uh, and just full on heart was racing. You know, couldn't breathe right, and that was I was there like that for a couple minutes, and luckily no one came by to see it. Otherwise, I don't know what would have happened, if it would have been made worse or just I don't know. Um, and it wasn't nervousness from like, you know, someone hugging me or yeah, anything like that. It was more. It was just I was horrified that someone had noticed me. Later on, I would wonder what would compel someone to talk to and hug a complete stranger that probably looked like he'd rather be anywhere else but where he was, or where he happened to be at that moment. Again, probably just the alcohol. I'm not sure. So that was probably like the biggest, I'd say, anxiety event during that first semester. Um, but in general, I was just in a constant state of tension and nervousness, walking around. Um, you know, in the beginning of the semester, get I'd get food, multiple times a day, but it was just it was so bad being in crowds where other people were also trying to, getting meals and food for themselves. It was just so bad to be in crowds like that, um, that I would just avoid it more and more, and it happened so quickly that, uh, that I wound up just only going out once a day late at night, and again avoiding all my classes, and not going. um so after the first semester there, uh I ended up seeing someone who kind of treated just the physical symptoms, with medication. I guess the thinking was that if the physical symptoms weren't there, then, uh, I'd have less of a reason to, isolate and avoid people, and that makes sense. Um, but it didn't really address the whole picture, so things ended up not really improving. So that's it for this part of this story, or recounting, whatever it is. Um, I'll finish the rest of it in the next video. Um, but yeah, thanks for watching, and there will be more soon. See ya.